Greetings exiles, I'm CodRayZeal, and joining me today as always are Sir Reginald Amadeus Fortescue III and Frank. Say hi guys.
Hi.
And today we're just going to bring you a quick update on how the Righteous Fire cast-while channeling Chieftain is doing. So first let's go over where our passive tree is at now. Before we just had Ramako and Aronghui, but since then I've upgraded to cast-while channeling Blade Vortex, so I've picked up Namahu in place of Aronghui, and then I've picked up Hinekora as well, just to get some leech, a little bit of extra strength, and cover enemies in Ash, as well as all the ridiculous amounts of fire damage we get from physical damage due to Namahu. The rest of the passive tree is pretty much the same, with the exception of Elemental Equilibrium being removed and Avatar of Fire being added. This is so that all of our Blade Vortex damage becomes fire damage, and since we're only dealing fire damage, we have no use for Elemental Equilibrium anymore. That said, without Elemental Equilibrium, it's still quite possible to kill mobs with your Righteous Fire while clearing. So this hasn't hurt our clear speed quite as much as I thought it would, and that is a great thing. The rest of the passive tree is just Righteous Fire stuff. I've picked up the reduced mana reservation along with sovereignty. This is pretty much just to run anger, because I did find a Watcher's Eye from my first Elder kill, which gives physical damage as extra fire damage while affected by anger. So that was a luck, and I've switched from using vitality to using anger. So let's go over where our gear is at right now. First of all, I'm using a regular armor helm with some life and resists. This is all I got at the moment. I haven't found any strong essences yet to craft anything. My amulet, I'm still using a basic dexterity intelligence turquoise amulet with some life and resists, and also some stats to balance out that dexterity requirement from Blade Vortex. For my shield, I have found Springleaf, I've found Rise of the Phoenix, and I've found Sapphire's Frame. Right now I'm using a Sapphire's Frame because it gives us a little bit of spell damage as well as increasing all of our maximum resistances. And when we have our endurance charges up, we probably suffer the most from cold and lightning damage. My boots are still the same boots from the last video. These are going to be pretty tough to top in Solar Self-Found. And I'm still using my Meginord's Vice because these give me damage, a little bit of life and some regeneration, so I haven't found the need to change them just yet. My weapon is a Sambar Scepter for that damage penetration. On there I've just got some increased fire damage, increased area of effect and attack speed. I would like to upgrade this to one of the many variations that I'll talk about a little later on. Through a Warband unique strongbox, I was able to pick up a red blade band. Now I've put my golem in here because right now there's no reason for me to be putting purity of fire in a ring until I get a +3 ring or a 21 purity of fire. So this seemed like an adequate substitute, as this keeps our golem alive far more than putting it in regular sockets. Definitely something to consider if you find it on Solo Self-Found or even in a trade league, because they're generally pretty cheap. My belt is ridiculous, especially that 1% increased movement speed. Now what happened was I farmed some Elder maps and finally found a leather belt which I intended to craft life recovery rate on. But I mean, look at this belt. I'm not going to roll over that. It'd be silly. And so that is my belt right now. Ridiculous. I did manage to get the prophecy for a Calm's Way coral ring. Coral! And this was probably about 300 prophecies in. What I was doing was going to the Tidal Island in Act 6 and grabbing a crab with Deep One's Presence, and then using said crab to refill my prophecies, doing all the prophecies and doing that again. I did this for about 2 days. It was not easy. But at the same time, I did also find a Belly of the Beast prophecy and completed that. I completed this in the quarry in Act 9. Don't complete it in the harvest because you won't be able to 6-socket the resulting Belly of the Beast. But the mobs that are required for this prophecy do also spawn in the quarry. Following that, I managed to 6-link it, so I've temporarily got my cast while channeling set up in here, which is Scorching Ray, Blade Vortex, Efficacy, Iron Will, cast while channeling, and Fire Penetration. I would love this last thing to be Empower, so it boosts both of the skills, but you know, you can't just have an Empower in Solar Self-Found apparently. Before I was using my cast while channeling setup in here, I did actually have a Righteous Fire link in here. Now in order to link Righteous Fire in a 6-link, to get roughly the same damage you would get from a 4-link with an Essence Craft, you need to link it Righteous Fire, your standard Righteous Fire links, and then in order to support things like Swift Affliction and less duration, we have to socket in Arcane Surge. So when you put in Arcane Surge, Righteous Fire functions as a duration skill, and as such you can add things like Swift Affliction and less duration. This is a pretty good Solar Self-Found alternative if you haven't found an Essence yet and you don't have one of those powerful Righteous Fire 4 links to use. And once I've figured out my weapon setup, if my 6-link is available in my chest, I'll just be doing that again. So the actual link setup would be Righteous Fire, Arcane Surge, Swift Affliction, less duration, elemental focus, and burning damage. As you can see, my AoE is pretty high even without increased AoE, so I really don't see the need to keep that setup going. Of course, if I find an Essence, that's all out the window, and then I will likely be dual wielding instead of using a staff. But we'll see how it goes. The reason it took me this long to make the video is actually because I have yet to find any of my end game weapon ideas, so I'm just fiddling around with this for the meantime. My flasks, I'm using an Eternal Life Flask of Staunching, just as much healing as I can still get from a flask. Ruby Flask of Staunching, just in case I'm taking degen damage, as I've said many times before. This fixes the degen issue if the degen is coming from bleeding or if it's coming from my Righteous Fire for whatever reason. Next, I'm using a Sulphur Flask of Warding. This is just to remove curses and give us a little bit extra damage. Next, I'm using a Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline, still the same one I was using earlier, and this pretty much gives us the movement speed we need if we're going to be dual wielding or using a staff, or potentially even a bow. And lastly, I've got a Granite Flask of Heat because I found I needed some chill reduction because it was really irritating being slowed down by the chill, something that doesn't happen on a Juggernaut. So that is my gear. Let's just quickly go over the link setup. In my weapon, I've got Shield Charge linked with Fortify and faster attacks, just for general movement. Since I'm still using a shield, this is the best option. In my helm, I have Enduring Cry, Purity of Fire, and then Clarity linked with Blood Magic. This was just because I found I wasn't able to sustain my Scorching Ray indefinitely, and a couple of levels on Clarity on Blood Magic, and that problem is solved. In my shield, I've got Herald of Ash and Anger linked with Enlighten. If I didn't have that Watcher's Eye, I would have Herald of Ash and Vitality linked with Enlighten. In my boots, because it doesn't really matter where I put it now, is my Righteous Fire, which is linked with increased area of effect, elemental focus, and burning damage. I just found this setup to be the most useful while I was clearing maps. I am on yellow tier at the moment, by the way. And then in my gloves I've got Orb of Storms linked with Curse on Hit, Flammability and Chain. I really like using Chain on Orb of Storms because it covers a much larger area as well as a lot more enemies when you do it this way. So that is pretty much it for this little update. I will be posting one final update once I've got my weapons and everything sorted, and that will likely be the actual build guide. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and so would Sir Reginald Amadeus, Fortescue III and Frank. And if you liked the video, hit that like button. If you'd like to see more content like this, then do hit that subscribe button. And that is pretty much it. So good luck and stay juicy.